We're here to protect you and the ones that you love. It's a good feeling to know that our efforts aren't going unnoticed.
It actually brought tears to my eyes to know that we have this support.
You're welcome. I must just say, you're welcome. It's stressful, but we're not going anywhere.
Welcome to another edition of Bucknell Women's Rowing Through the Decades. Tonight we have the decade of the 2000s. We've got four outstanding alums joining head coach Steve Kish, one of our current student athletes, Liz Berlinger from Bluebell, Pennsylvania. Liz is a sophomore on the current team, and we thank her for joining tonight's call. My name is Todd Newcomb, and I want to thank Geisinger, our sponsor for tonight's event. Geisinger has done a great job throughout the pandemic, and as always, they do a great job with our student athletes at Bucknell day in and day out. I'd like to introduce our guest, and then I'll turn it over to Coach and Liz, and they'll run with the show and ask the questions. Our first guest from the class of 2005 is Rachel Truscheim. Our next guest from the class of 2006, Christine Drosba. Christine was the Robert A. Latour Service Award winner at the Senior Awards Banquet her senior year. Our next guest from the class of 2009 is Kelly Hinkler. Kelly was a CRCA All-Mid-Atlantic second team selection in both 2007 and 2009, and she was a three-time All-Patriot League selection. And our next guest is Mary Wilson, who was an All-Patriot League first team selection in 2010. She was also a CRCA National Scholar Athlete in 2008, 2009, and 2010, and she won the Ronald J. Pete Pedrick Award at the Athletic Department Senior Awards Dinner. So, Coach, we've got a great group. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to turn it over to you. You're on mute, Coach.
You're on mute, Steve.
We have a couple questions up front from me, and then we'll go to Liz. I think the first set of questions, we can be relatively to the point because the second set is a little bit more interesting. We'll go in that order from Rachel to Christine to Kelly to Mary, so we don't need to call your name. And
this is my fear. I would be first.
Oh, you're so first across. You're first across the line, Rachel.
And you're right, Steve. I've always been first across the line. Okay, so the question is, how did I get into rowing?
The first question is for everybody, starting with Rachel. What have you been up to since graduation? Where has life taken you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I, after graduation, I moved back into the New Jersey, New York area, and I pursued a career in publishing, which was great for tourists, and that was just great. And I've done lots of interesting things. I've worked with lots of interesting authors and lots of crazy people, as authors are. But I also struck out on my own in 2013, and I decided to create my own company and do my own thing. So that's what I've been doing for the last several years. And I also have a little girl and a dog, and maybe they might make an appearance. So sorry about that. I'm trying to keep it not that way. So yeah, up to a lot.
And Rachel, where are you now?
I'm in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Got it. All right, Christine.
Hi, Christine Drosba. After graduation, I actually stayed at Bucknell. I stayed on for 2 more years and got my master's degree in education. The first year of that, I rowed and used up my last year of eligibility, and then coached one of the novice boats as a grad student that second year. And since then, I've worked in higher education. I worked at after I graduated, I went up to Bowdoin in Maine and worked in higher ed there, and got involved with coaching the rowing team. And from there, I went to Vanderbilt University down in Nashville and worked and coached there. Then I moved back up to New York. I'm from New York, and I worked at NYU for a few years, and I'm now at Sarah Lawrence College in Bronxville, right outside of the city. The work I do in higher ed is working with civic engagement programs, building community partnerships. We work with everything from prison education programs to nonprofit internships for students, things like that. And I've been lucky enough to be able to coach and work in a lot of those places as well.
All right, Kelly, you're up.
She might have frozen a little bit there.
Hey, Kelly, you're up.
Kelly, you're on mute.
Okay. I didn't hear any of the intro. I'm not sure what my sound when I came back again, but I missed almost the time you hit record, and I only grasped the.
We're having a tough time seeing you and hearing you. I don't know if you have a different spot where your Wi-Fi might work a little bit better. Let's go to Mary next, and then see if we can get Kelly after that.
Okay, hi, I'm Mary Minkovich. I graduated in 2010 and I'm from Downingtown, which is outside Philly, and I moved to Philadelphia right after I graduated. And I got a job at Lockheed Martin. I'm a systems and quality engineer, so I test software and I write requirements to figure out how to test it. And I've pretty much done that in some way, shape, or form for the whole 11 years since I've graduated, and moved around and tested different stuff. And I have a husband and 2 children, a girl who's about to be 4 and a son who is 1. So that is keeping me very busy recently.
We'll catch up with Christine when she gets, or sorry, with Kelly when she gets back. The second question is, what brought you to Bucknell, and then also what brought you to the rowing team, and maybe even kept you on the rowing team?
Hey again, huh? Okay. So I wasn't recruited. I was not an athlete necessarily. I knew I had athletic ability. I could run. I was very good at many things. But I never was recruited for the program. And so it was sort of a kind of a funny occurrence when I decided to join the program and to try. And it's very hard. I think, as many people know, I've had many 2 seats. I think I've had 24 2 seats or more, because people don't really stick with it. And the thing is, what part of the magic is that comes along with rowing at Bucknell is the fact that, like, we were scrappy. We were just trying to keep our bootstraps on and try to figure it out. And there was something really amazing about the program, and Coach Kish, and also Coach Roof, who recruited me, I guess, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, the grueling process of becoming an athlete when you're kind of like new to it, was crazy, and also just super rewarding. This is something I would never trade for anything in the world.
Rachel, how did you choose Bucknell?
I chose it because it was high in the alphabet. That's the truth. I was really stressed out as a high school kid, and I was doing all the AP classes. I was a drum major. I was doing everything, and I felt really pressured. And so but there's something about Bucknell that really stood out to me, and it was its majesty. The fact that it's on up a high hill. My dad took me to see the campus, and I fell in love with the library, its atrium, and I also fell in love with the river. I'm not gonna lie. Bucknell like chose me in some ways, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So even though it's only a B, A and B in the alphabet, it was definitely one of my first choices, and that's why I came.
Let's go to Christine.
Hey, so I came to Bucknell as a transfer student. As a sophomore, I had gone to a huge state university my first year. I had gone to a huge public high school and thought that's what I wanted. And then started thinking halfway through my first year, like, well, maybe a smaller liberal arts college will be a better fit. One on a road trip, one maybe it was Thanksgiving. I think my parents were going to kill me. And we looked at a couple different places and thought, yeah, this is sort of more my speed, probably all of the other Patriot League schools. And went on a really great tour at Bucknell after I had applied and was sort of thinking, is this something I'm really going to do? It was just me and my dad and the tour guide, and it was like a 4-hour tour. And he answered all of our questions, and it was just a really great feeling that I think was indicative of my experience there. And so I came in as a sophomore and knew I wanted to get involved with some kind of team. I had always been an athlete in high school. I played lacrosse, I played basketball. I was terrible at them. I couldn't get recruited by a Division III school at either of them, no matter how hard I tried. But I figured, I went to the activities fair and thought, well, maybe I'll play rugby or frisbee or something. And I had seen, I think on the website that rowing was a D1, like a varsity sport. And so that was like not on my radar. And Trush, it actually might've been you that came up to me at the activities fair. And I remember thinking, we're like physical opposites, which you can't see on Zoom. And
you're probably right, Christine.
I'm thinking like, are you kidding? Like, there's no way the two of us could be like, do you have to be little, like tiny? This is probably not for me. And then I think like maybe Julie Engel or maybe Coach or somebody swooped in and was like, no, you'll be fine. And so I came out and thought,
it must have seemed very strange.
It was, I felt like, and then actually probably afterwards, I realized like, we were probably told like, look up, see who might be tall coming in. But I came out and did fall, learn to row, and had absolutely no idea how terrible I was. I knew I was having a great time splashing around. I made some great friends. I didn't really think of it as, I wasn't thinking about where I was on the team or how well I was doing, which was probably for the best, because it wasn't until later that I learned I was not doing so well. But Coach invested a tremendous amount of time in getting me up to speed, giving me feedback. And I think by the spring, when I realized this was something I wanted to do for 4 years and really invest a lot of time in, was when we were in Miami for training over January break. And I could see some of the varsity girls talking about, being competitive and doing pieces, and got that first little taste of like racing and not just being outside and enjoying the weather and having fun. And so I think that's when I the competitive piece, I was like, okay, well, we can do this and be fast and, maybe win some races too. And that's what got me hooked. I still have the poster, for the recruiting poster, in my apartment in a frame that says, it says, join whatever, women's rowing practices in the afternoon. Fake news.
Right. And then 2-a-days for every day after. Oh my God,
Mary,
that's so funny.
So choosing Bucknell, I don't remember my process really. I applied to a bunch of schools and toured a lot, and I liked Bucknell, but I kind of just picked it because that was the best school I got into. I wanted to go to like an academic school. I wanted to go small. I knew I didn't want to be at a large place. That's not me at all. So it worked out well, but I didn't know anyone going there. So that's how I started rowing. We got emails even before we got to campus about joining the team. And I remember I Facebook stalked someone on the team to ask details about it. It was Kim Weaver. And I asked her if you wear bathing suits for it. So that's how little I knew about rowing. And she never mentioned it until our senior year. She was like, remember when you asked about the bathing suits? So anyway, I went to practice and there was a lot of novices that year. I want to say there was 50 or 60. And probably after 2 or 3 weeks, we did a 2K test. And I remember out of all the girls, I came in dead last. I was the last one on the erg, and they were like, you're a coxswain. So that's how I became a coxswain on the team.
Oh, you're my spirit animal.
So yeah, they pegged me for not being an athlete right away, but what kept me on the team, because it was really awkward being a novice coxswain telling people what to do when I didn't know how to do it myself, was all the like awesome girls on the team, and I made so many friends. And then somewhere in my freshman spring racing season, the coxswain of the 2v8 got sick, and I had to cox a boat against like our first race against the Ivies. Me, a novice coxswain, jumping in the 2v8. I was terrified. I could not tell you how the boat did, but I remember that it was so much fun that I was like, I have to keep doing this. I finally felt like I was a part of the boat because it was so exciting versus like coxing people who also didn't know what they were doing. So that was what kept me on the team.
Hey, Kelly, are you there? If so, can you catch us up with what you've been doing since graduation, where life has taken you, and then also backtrack to how'd you decide on Bucknell and on rowing?
Yeah, so can you hear me? Am I working
Yes.
now? Okay,
Yes.
sorry. My husband was not here and I had dinner with our 2-year-old by myself. It wasn't going smoothly. So I'm sorry.
Right there with you.
She is with him. So I was, let's see, I'm supposed to start with like just what I've been doing. So graduated in 2009. I went to Peace Corps, so I lived in West Africa for 2 years, and it was awesome. It was really, really fun. I was a preventative health education there, but I really just did a lot of farming work, which I knew nothing about, but I knew the scientific method, so I could kind of help with experimenting on the demonstration farm plots, which was cool. And then I came back, I went to med school up in Albany, New York. I even restarted a rowing club in Albany, New York for a semester or two. And then I was like, this is really not as fun as rowing at Bucknell. And I stopped. And then after that, I'm currently in Charlottesville, Virginia. So I came down here to go to a family medicine residency in Virginia, in Charlottesville. It's a great town, despite its news from a long time ago. And I graduated about 2 years ago. I started working in a private practice as a family medicine doctor a year ago. And it's been wonderful. I work part-time so I can hang out with my little 2-year-old daughter. And my husband is going to be going to school out in LA. So we are relocating to Los Angeles this summer, which is going to be huge, but interesting and a different change of pace. So I think that catches me up on where I am right now. And then I think you guys were talking about kind of how you picked Bucknell. I was like dragging my feet. I wanted to go to college, but I didn't want to tour colleges. And my mom was like taking me all around, and I was being like a surly teenager, like, it's hot, I don't want to do this, this is awful. And we got to Bucknell and my mom was like, oh my gosh, this place is amazing. Like, you need to go here. And I didn't even, when I got in, I was still kind of lukewarm because I got into a school, as the people who rode with me know, I like horseback riding too. And I got into a school that had like a varsity equestrian team, and my mom was like, yeah, but you should really go to Bucknell. It's a much better school. And so I went to Bucknell, and I couldn't be more happy that I did. I joined because I think I had actually was looking for schools that had rowing teams. I had never rowed, but I thought it looked like fun. And I was cross country runner, and I was getting tired of running. And I saw one of the, did you see I was pointing to my recruiting posters behind me? The You Can Do It poster is still in my office, you know, when I'm bored and I struggle to get through work.
I remember those.
And yeah, I went out and just tried, and with I think a whole bunch of my roommates went out. It was just like Mary said, there was tons of novices. I think you guys were all on the same boat. Every year was a bunch of novices. Just thought it was really fun. I'm sitting here laughing, listening to Dros describe herself as bad as rowing, because from the time that I joined the team, she was like the golden, amazing rowing hero we could all look up to. And I think that describes where I got there and how I just got to rowing. It was like absolutely one of the experiences of my life I treasure and value the most. Like, as you can tell, the fact that that poster hangs by my desk, it means so much to me.
That's awesome.
Hey, Kelly, I don't know if you can tell that we can't see you. It's okay if you can't put your video
Oh, you
on.
can?
Nope.
I can see her. I can see her.
Oh, you can see her. I can't see her.
Yeah.
Weird.
It's you.
Very
You've been popping in and out.
Is that better? I turned it on and off. That seems to work sometimes.
I think Steve, your connection has been going in and out, FYI.
Really?
Yeah.
Bummer. Okay, well, before we turn to Liz, I'd love to reminisce with every single one of you forever, but we do want to spend as much as we can focusing on, the women that are currently on the team and what we can share with them. And but before we do that, I just want to make note to Liz and whoever else is watching. So the program has gone through a period of having mostly novices who didn't row before that were high school athletes. And then slowly over time, it's changed to having mostly rowers that did row in high school and very few novice athletes. And these guys are a real interesting group, testament to the strength of the novice program and how special it is. And in fact, we didn't do our novice program this fall because of COVID, and we just started it back in March. So we have 25 novices on the water right now for their maybe 5th row of the year in April.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's going pretty well. But Rachel being, the earlier class, Rachel was part of a special group that we went from being competitive in 4s and 2-person boats to finally breaking through in the 8-person boat.
We broke through the 8s, yeah.
And Rachel was in the lightweight 8 that won the gold medal at the Dadvale Championship, our first ever gold medal there. And it really broke the seal for us in terms of a lot of competitive success that came next. Kelly came in, and in 2006, or before that, Drosba was there, but we were getting more competitive in the open weight 8 as well. And then Kelly came in along with Drosba, and in Kelly's first year, she was a novice and she stroked the varsity 8, so the top boat in the boathouse, but clearly a top athlete with an equestrian background. And Drosba was part of that group and was, like Kelly said, one of the leaders in that group. Drosba fortuitously was able to come back for a graduate school year and win another championship in a row. Mary came in shortly after that, and Mary's contribution is endless as a coxswain. We had a ton of success while she was here as well with the Patriot League, but I'll be honest, I think the biggest impact, apart from having winning crews that she led, was just the spirit that she brought. And I don't know if Mary remembers this a lot or not, but she was basically our team choreographer. And every year at spring break, we would have the most, and not just spring break, even at the Patriot League Championships up in Worcester, we would have the most amazing choreographed skit that Mary would do. And one year she actually got me involved, so I got to surprise the team and do a few dance moves. But yeah, real special group when it comes to the novices. Liz, I'm going to hand it over to you. Go for it.
Hi, it's so nice to be able to talk to all of you. I'm so honored to be on this call. So my first question is, what advice would you give me or any of the other athletes in our program today about the college rowing experience at Bucknell? I also
love Steve
first.
Yeah, why don't we start with the same order and Rachel can go first.
Again. Okay. Sorry. Okay. All right. So what advice could I give you? That's a huge loaded question. I feel like, when you're in a rowing program, there's something really special about rowing itself that you can't replace. There's Steve. There we go. Steve, you're popping in and out. Okay. Sorry, distracted. So what could I give you any advice? I would say no matter what your challenges are, they're always surmountable. You can always do anything. I've had so many struggles within the program, not because of the program itself, but because I'm 5'2", 100 pounds. And I think at one point, Steve, you said I was 108 pounds soaking wet. So I always had an uphill battle to climb. In fact, there was one time when I think in my novice year, you took over some weight training. We were in the new facility. And you said, Rachel, I don't understand it. You need to lay down. I'm going to measure your wingspan. And you did that in front of everybody else. And I have a very long wingspan. It is almost as long as I am tall. And he was like, okay, now I get it. Okay, fine. You can be a rower. And that's exactly how I feel about the program. Like, I think that if there's anything that you feel is a hurdle, whether it's something you're not good at, whether it's a technique, whether it's weight training or something, you can overcome this. You can overcome it, because guess what? If you really love rowing, if you love what it's about, which is the sweetness of clipping a blade into the water, or the calmness that you experience at 5, 6 a.m. in the morning, it is something that you'll never forget, and it's going to shape the rest of your life for sure. So don't think just because you get a criticism that that's the end of the road. That's it.
Thanks, Rachel. How about you, Christine?
I don't know, I've been thinking about this. I think for me, because I came in a little late, I missed a year because of an injury. I had that sort of bonus year as a grad student. And I really was able to, I think, especially in those later years, like just soak up enjoying every moment. Like even when it's really hard, even when you're exhausted, even when things aren't going well, or you're frustrated, or things are, you've got a lot on your plate. I think just being able to take a step back and like, even in just like individual quiet moments, just to really appreciate it. Looking back, it's not even the rowing. It's sometimes, I think of being in the cafeteria with everybody after practice on a Saturday. And those are some of the memories that I keep, going back to now. And there were a million of them, but like I can just, took the time to appreciate them while they were happening. And I think sort of along the same lines, now being out, I'm getting things for my 15-year reunion now, which doesn't seem possible, but with all that time passed and like a lot of different jobs and stuff like that, you don't always have an opportunity like I did at Bucknell on the rowing team to be working really hard for something with everybody pushing in the same direction with you. I think hopefully folks have those opportunities elsewhere in life, where you have an opportunity to challenge yourself and like, push for specific goals, or just to be really good at a specific thing. But just the feeling of everybody everybody pushing with you and for you at the same time is kind of a unique little experience that you get on the team. I haven't been able to replicate that exact feeling elsewhere, even though I've had some really cool jobs and neat opportunities and things like that. It's a really special thing to be a part of.
Kelly.
So I'm special in that I, like Christine, but I did not do all 4 years, so I wasn't recruited. In my third year, I wanted to horseback ride more, so I did not row my third year. And Coach very kindly said I could come back my fourth year. And at some point in our 4 years at Bucknell, I remember Coach saying, cherish this. You're never going to get another experience like that. And I don't think I like disregarded it. I was just like, yeah, you're probably right. You're definitely right. Like Christine's, like everyone has said, I've been a part of a lot of really awesome teams. I've worked in medicine where hopefully we're all trying our hardest to get to a goal together. But it's just nothing like the rowing team was. And I just like cherish that so much, and just always remind yourself again during those like hard mornings, or when you're trying to study for finals and row at the same time, and you're like, it's just such a unique and amazing experience.
Mary.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's the team and it's so much fun. And I feel like in the moment, especially I'm pretty like a high anxiety person. So I easily got caught up in the stress of all of it, the stress of school, the stress of the team, and what boat I would be in or who was going to be in my boat. But really, when you look back on it, I wish I could have just enjoyed the process so much more, because it's a once in a lifetime thing. It's not like that when you go to work. Not everyone is excited about it like you are with the rowing team. It's a really rare thing to have 50 girls or however many people are on the team all working so hard and excited about the future and every weekend what's going to happen next. And it's so special that if you can focus on that part versus everything that you're worried about, it's worth it, because you only get it once, so you might as well enjoy it.
And cherish like how fit you are. I know that sounds silly, but like I now think like when I had like a really good month of working out every day or something, I'm like, I'm still nowhere near as fit as I was in college.
I remember saying maybe it was
Not the
even
toddler? You don't have big guns anymore?
That's the only part. Just the toddler lifting arms.
There's just, it's only the biceps. That's it. And the lower back.
I had knee surgery a couple weeks ago and have to go to PT, and they put me on the leg press, and I started backing up like, oh my gosh, no. And then they're putting it on like weights that I'm like, okay, I can deal with this. But it's upsetting to think about how the mighty have fallen.
How many people have had an ugly face on the leg press?
Could you not?
All right, so
Yeah.
in the interest of time, but also so you don't feel like you have to repeat what someone else said, I'm going to couple the next two questions together. So your choice on this question, on these two questions. One is, do you have a most memorable experience that you want to share? Or the other would be, is there someone that you remember from the team that you admired the most while you were on the team? Starting with Rachel.
Starting with me. Again, I crossed the finish line first. So, okay, fine. I have a million memories. I have so many things that I could say to everybody. You're just going to be, like things that you can't replicate. The one thing I'll say before I dip into that, if that's okay, is that I admired all of my teammates. I mean, I really felt such a part of them. And that was something that I thought that I brought to the program, was the fact that I loved my team and I loved my coaches and I loved everybody. And what I thought that maybe I brought to the organization, despite being small and atypical and not really of the rower body athlete kind of type, was the fact that I brought a lot of heart. And I felt like something I did for the organization and for everybody was to remind them why we fight. Why do we do this? Why do we love rowing? Why do we do it? You do it for other people. And so I can't single out one person, although I will absolutely, with Lauren Ewald, there's lots of people who have been my 2s, my 4s, and my 7s. I've been on every seat. So I've switched blades. There's lots of people who I, just love for what technique and whatever they could bring. But then now I'm going to segue into my most memorable. I have too many. The Henley was probably the single most transformative experience of my adult life. I feel so lucky I was able to row it. I feel so lucky that we got a boys pocock to row in. I feel lucky that I saw Coach Kish with his bicycle drive, just basically fall into the river. So lucky, so lucky. Perfect. Could not have asked for anything more than that. I saw swans. I saw everything. I'm so lucky to have seen all of that and to have rowed all through Reading, from Henley-on-Thames to Reading. We were so lucky to have done that. And it was just, it was so priceless when you go through an experience where I mean, we did rather well. I don't know, you can tell me, Steve. We did well. But it's, I think there's something, again, I'll go back to the zeitgeist of everything, which is just that rowing is special. Like, how many people get to do it? How many people get to experience the river and experience the calmness and the quiet and everything else that goes on? And sometimes the smell, and sometimes the chalk, And sometimes the waves, it's everything. Miami, chop, salt. I've had way too many to count. But I'll end on this so everyone else can talk about their piece and how they've. When we first won our gold medal at Dad Fail, I crossed first. I was in the bow. I crossed first, and the first thing I thought, I had no oxygen left. I was heaving and hoeing, and we were just, so I was in the bow, and one of my signature things to do was to shout encouragements, in addition to the coxswain. And this was cool with the coxswain. Kieran and I, whoever and we were cool. So it wasn't out of turn, but I just shout encouragements along, that we were almost there, just get us there, and I did that for the Dad Fail where we won. And as soon as I got past the finish line, the first thing in my head, I said, "You're only as good as your next accomplishment." And I laid down on my two seat, and I was like, until the next one. Because that's how we live, and that's how we rode. So I'm done.
Okay, Christine.
Well, in like the 15 years, I think it has shifted from appreciating more sometimes like the little moments, all of Mary's skits, and hanging out in the caf and all the bus rides are things that I think bubble up more readily now. But I think I have to say our first Patriot League championship in 2006. I was the only senior in that boat. Lauren Olson was a junior, and then Kelly and all of her crew of first years and sophomores who were all walk-ons as well, all true novices and sophomores who had just started out as novices. So we were, I had sort of the perspective of 4 years of getting trounced by Navy and a little bit of understanding that was my last chance. I mean, we sort of had no reason to believe that we would do as well as we did, except sort of in our own knowing how hard we had worked and knowing how much we had wanted to have a really great race. It was a struggle that year. That was a year that I think that was probably the first year we had a substantial number of recruits coming in. So there was like a little bit of change in the culture, I think. We had been picked to finish last in that Patriot League poll in the beginning of the season, and got a little bit closer each race, a little bit better, but our V8 struggled a lot. And then it all kind of came together in a really great race. And I remember thinking when we crossed the finish line, we still weren't sure if we had won. I think my parents will talk about being on the shore and like finding strangers and like trying to ask, did they win? Did they win? And remember thinking like, well, whatever happened out there in those last 2,000 meters, like that was, I feel like this was the capstone. This was a really great, the 9 of us, the whole team, finally, like everything sort of came together. So I think that for sure. Also, the next year, this is a memory that isn't necessarily mine, but when the lightweights won the IRA championship, I was flying that weekend out to California for an internship, and I was getting some other folks were giving me text messages and phone messages that I would get at my layovers about how they were doing. And I got a play-by-play in my dorm room at the campus I was interning at when they came down in that grand final and won. And so my first impression, my employer's first impression of me was like the one who was screaming in the room about some race that I'm sure they didn't understand. So the wins were important, and I'll always hold those really close. But what has sort of bubbled up in the interim too has been just like the experience of being on the team and the teammates, I think.
Thanks, guys. Kelly.
Sorry. I agree with what you said, Rachel. Just, my gosh, every teammate is my favorite teammate. Like, they're so much best friends. And I feel like every time we, it's not a COVID world and we get to have a reunion, it's like, oh my gosh, I miss you guys so much. And so I don't even know if I could single anybody out. Maybe Jenny Trace, because I think she would sit behind me when I was like, I remember like some of the first days that they were like, here, stroke the V8, it'll be great. And Jenny just behind me being like, slow down, it's okay, breathe. And I feel like half the reason I could even stroke that boat was because Jenny was sitting behind me. And then in terms of like, again, how can you like pick a moment? It's really hard. I think same thing, like the ones I value the most are those like calf chills and things like that. I remember, I think Dross, you were here for this. We were like in the bus at a race, and we were like, I think driving to the starting line, and driving to warm up or something. And I think it was just the V8, and it was like somebody turned on Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield. And we all were singing, and like, again, we just felt so powerful. The song, we just feel so powerful.
I think Brittany declared it our anthem.
Yeah, it was. I remember that 2006, like that first Patriot League championship as well. But like, I remember I caught a crab in the middle of the race. That was.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but.
But we still won, so it's okay.
Don't be that girl.
And I remember like pulling the boat out of the water at the end and just feeling like this rush of like, oh my God, what just happened? That was amazing. And then I think my race that I thought was the most fun, or at least I remember being the most fun, was rowing a 4 in the fall at the head of the Charles. And Coach took all our, like 4 of our V8 rowers and put them in a 4. So we may have had a slight advantage. And we were picked, I think, last. It was a head race. And so we were like dead last starting. And just the feeling of like, we passed a ton of boats. It was just like this really awesome feeling. And our coxswain was this really like loud, vocal, awesome coxswain who was just, I remember her screaming at the other boats. Like to this day, I can hear her being like, Lafayette, move to port. We stopped in the middle of the race because somebody didn't move over enough. And Whitney Henry, who couldn't be here, but she was in the bow, like the girl was like about to stand up in the boat and climb into the other boat to be like, get away from us. And it was all in all really fun and enjoyable race.
That river is wicked.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you guys came to a dead stop, but you still won.
Yes. A dead stop for one. Still won. So it felt pretty good.
All right, Mary.
Awesome. So favorite memory, which I wouldn't have thought this when I was on the team that I would think back on this fondly, but would be spring training trips, because when you were there, it was pretty terrible. But in hindsight, all the skits and hanging out with your cabin and not getting to pick who was in your cabin and getting to know different people on the team each year was really a special time that you got to meet some of your best friends that you didn't even know would be your best friends. And obviously I got really into the skits and the dancing, and dancing with Coach Kish my senior year was probably the highlight. And Coach will say that I asked him to dance, but really he pulled me aside in the erg room and I thought I was in trouble and was like shaking with fear. And he said, Mary, I want to dance. So that was probably the best moment ever. And for looking up to people, I guess it was my freshman or sophomore year, I felt like I didn't know anyone in my cabin and I was really nervous. And Whitney Henry was in my cabin and I just fell in love with her. I thought she was the most awesome person. I still think that about her. She is so nice. I've never seen her do a mean thing in her life. I've followed her around since I graduated. She was in Philly. I hung out with her like every weekend. I just think she is the best. She introduced me to my husband. I vacation with her still. So my obsession with Whitney Henry continues.
That's great. Okay, Liz, I think you're up next.
Yes. So my question is, what advice do you guys have about networking and finding the right job after Bucknell?
Me. Okay. So I did not follow a traditional trajectory at all. I had to find an internship on my own. I didn't really have connections through Bucknell. So I felt a little bit, to the wayside a little bit after Bucknell. But again, that kind of just like goes to like my story, which is just like find your own path, do your own thing. Everything's going to be fine. And I think that it depends on what you're looking for, what you're interested in. What I would probably say to you. So can I ask you a question? Are you a senior? I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm a sophomore. Yeah.
You're a sophomore. Okay.
Yes.
Plenty of time. Okay. So what you can do, if there's not something that you think is available to you at that moment with the Career Center, is that you can advocate. And I would say that this is something that you can probably, achieve within 2 years or less. It just, go ahead and express your interest and tell them the kinds of professions you're interested in or even are excited about. For me, publishing was not one that they had really ever really known about. And for me, it was just kind of an uphill battle. Nothing new. Part of my story. Sticking to it. It's fine. But but Bucknell has done so many other things for me. So I've never cast that in a negative light. It's just they need to hear from you as to what you want. So if you have an interest, go to the Career Center, drill down the door, post a sign, post a protest when they're trying to take away things from you that you want. So they'll listen.
Christine, Kelly, and Mary.
I think maybe along the lines of what Rachel mentioned in terms of like, concrete support from Bucknell is, I think when I was there, my idea that like networking and some things like the career center were for people who were engineers or in finance or had a fell into like medicine, maybe fell into a couple of different boxes, and that's not true. Now working on a college campus, working on a lot of different college campuses, that they're networking and going in and checking in about different types of opportunities. You don't have to have a clear idea of what you're going to do. You don't have to fit into like a specific image of maybe one of those buckets. That all of that stuff is important and for everybody, no matter what kind of field you're looking to go into. In terms of, I guess, concrete career advice, I graduated into the last recession. When I was going to leave in 2006, everyone was getting these great like signing bonuses. And then when I actually left campus in 2008, it was like the bottom falling out of the economy. So I think it was a tumultuous time. So I know that folks looking to graduate now into uncertain world, my thoughts are with you. But I think one thing I wish I had done was, if you're thinking about grad school, like a little bit later on, to take the GRE when you're still a little bit in like school mode. It's a lot tougher to get to do the GRE, the LSAT or MCAT or something like that once you're like working and other life stuff starts piling on. So it's good for, I hope that they get rid of the GRE entirely, but for now it's the thing. So I would say it's good for 5 years and maybe take it while you're still a little bit in school mode or transitioning like that. And one thing I think that served me well as I was graduating and getting my first job was, a lot of people go into big cities, move to New York or Philadelphia, something like that. And I was going up at like 24 to this tiny little town in Maine. And like the rowing thing is a really great thing to have. It's a whole community that you can plug into a lot of places. So I, maybe it was like my second week at the job that I had there, I emailed the rowing coach and said, hey, could you use like any volunteers? And I immediately had a whole network of folks and a whole like family up there. And it would have been a tough, I think, transition for somebody in my spot otherwise. So I think that's like kind of a built-in community that you can tap into no matter where your first job takes you.
I think it's funny that you said that, Draz, because I don't really want to move to LA. I'm like, LA, that's going to be quite a change. And one of the like saving graces I keep thinking is like, I bet there's rowing there, like potentially some good rowing. So I totally feel you on it. Just wherever you go, it follows you. Networking wise, I would say what I've learned from watching my husband network is, you know, he went from not networking at all, not knowing how to do it, not feeling comfortable with it. My dad is like a networking crazy pants. And so my dad was like telling him, you know, this, you got to do this, you got to network. Here's a connection for you to like make this connection, meet this guy on LinkedIn. And my husband would start out on these Zoom calls and he would do fine. And he'd get off. He'd be like, I don't know what the point is. It feels like I'm just begging for a job. And he has gotten so much better at just realizing that like it's not about finding a job, it's about connecting with someone, and it's like finding like a like fancy work friend, and then like the jobs and the opportunities find their places. So just if you find someone and you're interested in what they're doing, just as weird as it feels, just set up a call with them, talk to them and have a couple questions, ask them about their life, ask them about what they do. And if you do that with enough people, you start to be like, oh, I talked to this person who does that. Oh, maybe you guys would get along well, and you can help other people form connections. Like, it's weird and it's awkward, but it really does work well if you can let go of thinking of it as like this is a interviewing for a job. It's just like meeting work friends kind of. And then my advice for just like other career things is that I think my GPA at the end of freshman year was in the ones. It was horrific. And it was not because I was a partier or anything like that. I just couldn't find a good balance. And most med school advisors are going to tell you like, you're not applying to med school like that. Like, no way. And I'm incredibly stubborn. And so I did anyway, and I'm fine, and I'm here, and I think I'm a good doctor. I don't think I think I pulled it together, and I learned my things. But if you feel like it's really the right track for you, there's a way to get there. Even if maybe your resume doesn't say exactly what it's supposed to say or look exactly how it does, like be creative, pull in other experiences, and work that rowing connection, because man, it's strong. Like the fact that you are a D1 rower, like you can use that to your advantage because people realize how hard that is. And you can create the picture of how hard it is to be a student athlete like that.
For me, I didn't know anything about networking in college. I felt like everyone else. I didn't think the Career Center was for me. A cousin of mine recommended that I apply for an internship at Lockheed, and I got it. And then I got a job through that. So I really didn't do much in job hunting either. I got really lucky. And then once I got to Lockheed, I kind of got some opportunities there, not through networking, but when I had my daughter, I started working part-time. So I worked 20 hours a week, but was still hoping to move around the company, but didn't feel like I could apply for jobs as a part-time person. Everything's listed as full-time. So I started reaching out to people who I knew were part-time, reaching out to people who already knew me, reaching out to people who I saw went to Bucknell and thought I could get my name in there. And it was really hard at first, but then you realize people want to help you. When you ask for help, people want to talk about themselves. People want to give you advice. And if you reach out to someone, they're going to help you. So as hard as it seems, do it and you're going to get somewhere with it. And I've gotten a lot of opportunities since being part-time when I felt like my career was going to stall. And if anything, it's gone further than it was when I was full-time, because I've learned how to put in the effort. And also people have reached out to me. And like I said, when someone reaches out to you, it's an honor. People want to talk to you and help you. So it's been great to also be a mentor to younger people, younger moms who are trying to follow in my footsteps. So or not my footsteps, any part-time person's footsteps. So it's awkward, but at the same time, once you start, you realize that it's actually a great opportunity to get to know people and get advice for people who are on your path. And I think somewhere Coach has like a spreadsheet of jobs people do and majors people had. If he doesn't, that should happen. because then you can look and see that, oh, this person was a math major and they're a systems engineer now. What's that all about? So I think that that would be a great way to explore different opportunities with rowers that you know would want to help you. That's
Okay,
it.
I think we're wrapping up in the last 5, at the most 10 minutes, right, Todd?
Yeah, we got time for that last question.
Cool. Last question is, is there a time in your life since you graduated where you feel like you've drawn specifically on your rowing experience? I know it's a pretty broad question, but maybe it's an acute moment or maybe more broad, but could you share a little bit about drawing on your experience to help you move forward?
Me. Okay. Hi. Okay. Okay. So that's a really tough question. I don't think that that's fair. But of course, I mean, there have been numerous times where I've channeled the power that comes from, quad tens and pushing through something for anything. I mean, I ran a half marathon. I've done tons of stuff since graduating and since this, and it's propelled me. Some of the mantras and some of the edicts and things that I've been so lucky to have experienced in rowing, they encounter me every day. And they're not always super apparent. I'm a mom now, and just, things kind of seem very chaotic on a day-to-day basis. But I will say that there's a certain amount of patience and trusting that you have to have in the process of rowing, and there's trusting of teammates. I think Christine said this really beautifully not so long ago, which is that you have to, there's something about pulling together and feeling like you're all in the same boat, and you know that if you catch that crab, you're persona non grata. So there's something about, and I don't think I've ever, maybe this is the better way to explain this before everyone else does so better than me. But the best way to describe rowing is to click in to 8 other people, find people properly, right? Click into that next person who's in front of you, find a rhythm with somebody and figure out the fact that you are part of them. You are not yourself. You are somebody who goes ahead and puts forth effort in support of a greater thing. And I think I've probably crafted my entire career based upon that, which is that I'm an editor, I'm a ghostwriter, I help other people do other things to make them feel great, and to make them be great. And I've never been one to self-aggrandize and to be the star. And I think that's exactly what rowing's all about, which is just, you're not a star, you're one of 8, or you're one of 4, whatever you're comprised of. You're somebody who's going to support and click in at the same time as everybody else. And it probably explains a lot. That feels very psychological, but explains a lot.
Christine, Kelly, Mary?
I guess the most specific thing is I found myself somewhat frequently in my job, either teaching courses or portions of trainings that I'm doing with students on leadership development. And high school me, early college me would have totally not used that word to describe myself. Still, I don't know that that's the word I would use. But something about, especially I think of the last year or my senior year on the rowing team, and sort of having a moment of realizing, this experience is what we make of it. And I'm sort of in a position where I can help craft and create an outcome that we all want, whether it's helping make a good experience for the novices coming in so that they want to stick with it, or helping kind of taking ownership over this experience that we all spend a lot of time doing and want to make sure that it's as successful as possible. And then looking back on it and thinking, well, that's sort of like what leadership is. You know, and everybody, even if you're not having a specific title or doing things that you would typically think of as a leader, when I work with my students, whether they're, you know, going into an internship someplace, or it's a course that has a leadership development piece. Mostly I'm talking with students who wouldn't describe themselves as leaders, but are doing this thing that they're really passionate about, whether they're, you know, the president of the anime club, or trying to work on a group project or something like that, and sort of carving out that sphere that you can influence. And I think back to like that experience on the rowing team pretty frequently, and just sort of developing those skills just because you want this thing that you're doing that you care about a lot to go as well as it can. In some ways, I've had to like detrain myself from rowing. I have this memory of driving to work at my first job, panicked because I was running late, and calling my boss and saying, I'm running late. I was always, for like a year, the first person in the office, probably by like a couple hours, and like rolled in 5 minutes before 9 o'clock or whatever it was. And they were like, you need to chill. But so some things you're like learning the balance of high expectations and where those come into play, and where society might not have the same norms that we had.
Well put.
I feel like I wasn't very good at being on time in college. Yeah, and I was late to the Zoom today, and I was like, well, they'll just expect it. I got better. Coach did not let me keep being bad at being on time. I improved. So I think feedback is something that I find comes like very naturally. When people give me feedback, I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. Let's, like, if it's, you know, something to work on or anything like that. I didn't ever think I did it in a special or particularly good way. I just was like, feedback is feedback. How do you get better? How do you build a better team? You have to like hear what the coach says and what your teammates say, and you have to take that and run with it. And it didn't dawn on me that I was actually, like, again, because of my time at Bucknell, probably every single one of us are really good at taking feedback. And I actually, one of my advisors in residency was a Bucknell grad as well. And she was working with me one time, and she was like, you're like my favorite resident to work with. Like, you just take feedback so well, and you like actually roll with it, and you do it, and you're not upset when I give you, like, you know, something to work on. And I was like, yeah. But like, I think that's cool that that's something that's just inherent in all of us from being part of that team.
Yeah, similar to what Kelly said, there's like a mental toughness that comes with being a Division I athlete. I think you learn how to go to practice when you don't want to go to practice, stay up late studying because you have to. There's only so much time in the day. Take feedback in a way that other people probably haven't experienced before, that I think prepared me for the real world more than I realized. That I'm pretty, like Kelly said, unfazed by any kind of feedback other than use it to get better. And I have experienced other coworkers who are not good at taking feedback and take it personal and get upset by it. And I think that the more you realize that rowing has prepared you to handle life and what it throws at you, you can appreciate all that time that you spent worried and stressed and overwhelmed in college, because it kind of gets easier after that. There's not going to be many times you have a 5 a.m. practice and test the next day and class all day and then a 5 p.m. practice. That's the worst it's going to be. So
part-time. Some of us are very fortunate to get to work.
Okay, before Todd wraps up, before Todd wraps up, and just want to say it's great to see you guys. Draz and Kelly, I've seen you guys a little bit more often. Rachel, it's been a while. It's great to see you again.
Been
Mary
a while.
Well. It has. Hope to see you at the next reunion. Todd, over to you.
All right, thanks, Coach. And I want to start with my closing comments and address those to Liz first. Liz, thanks so much for taking the time out tonight. I don't know what study time you were missing right now, but we appreciate you joining the call for us. And I hope you can take some valuable messages back to your teammates. You certainly heard a lot of good information tonight. And I know it's been an unbelievable year for you as a student athlete, as it has been for everybody here at Bucknell, everybody around the world. But I wish you the best of luck with the remainder of your competitions. And if things go well, it looks like you'll be rowing at home a lot, which is going to be fun. So best of luck to you and the team. And thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much.
Hugs.
So nice talking
Hugs.
to you.
Rachel's giving you hugs.
I'm giving you hugs because I know
Yeah.
it must be really hard.
There's a lot of us.
Like for you guys.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
I
us out
can't
in the different
imagine.
corners.
Can't imagine.
Yeah.
And to the alums, again, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for what you did while you were members of the rowing program here at Bucknell and how you represented the school and yourselves and the program. But more importantly, thank you for what you've done since you left Bucknell. The rowing program and all of our varsity programs here at Bucknell would not be what they are without the support of our alumni. So I really appreciate all that you do for Bucknell women's rowing. And then for those of you who did it at home tonight to watch, thank you for doing so, and go Bison. See everybody.
Right. Right.